Hello everybody, welcome to this forum, and today we're here to discuss the restoration of the Upper Green. I just want to highlight this is a forum, not a town meeting, so there are no issues that require any voting or anything like that today. We're just here to solicit information and share what we've done. Before we start, just introduce to everyone here the members of the committee. We have Janice Forrest.
Red Thurl.
Janice, who is also Secretary for the Newbury Historic Commission. Amelia Random, who's the clerk for this committee, and Anthony Matthews in the end. And we have a special advisor for the committee, who's the Newbury's tree warden, Tim Mack. Okay, just to go through what we're going to do here today is we'll just have a background to what the brief is that has been that the committee has been charged with doing, and then give you a sort of history of the Green and why it is important and why we're here to discuss restoring it, which Jan will do. We have distributed, it's available back, a list of the various things that we've been going through prior to this meeting, which you can have a copy you can take away with. On that there are contact points, so that if there are any questions that come out that aren't discussed today, feel free to continue the discussion by email on the contact points on that list. In addition, we have a list of the various trees as a first sample of what we've been looking at over the last few weeks. And then we'll carry on and have a discussion. Okay, firstly, what this committee is all about is it's created by the selectmen to seek input from you, the community, on how we can improve the Upper Green. And we're charged with having extensive outreach discussions with various people, including the tree warden, and we are charged with getting a list which are actionable and prioritised so that we can put all this together. In the process of doing so, we have two public forums. This is the first one. Thank you for coming, and I know there's some other interesting things going on right now, so we'll keep it as tight as possible. The timeline for this, set by the selectmen, means that we have to have another forum meeting, which will be in the first quarter of next year. I don't know the date yet, but we'll get that done, and that hopefully will start to put together all the ideas that we will come up with in a better format. The budget for this hasn't been organised, so the selectmen, that's something they've got to do, but we'll add that the committee know that we are starting off with a gift by one of the residents of the area, which was specifically laid down that it should be spent on restoring the Green. So we have something to start off, which can go quite a long way. So that's good news. So that's really the background of where we are. And now just the history of the Green, which is very important why we're all here. So over to Jen, who wants to add in more as well.
Good morning. I'm going to give you a quick quote from the master plan that states that historic preservation uses the protection of historic structures, districts, landscapes, and other resources as a means of preserving the elements of a community's character, which will thereby enhance the quality of life for local residents. So of course the Upper Green is certainly falls in that purview. The traditional use of the Green began with a plan developed in 1642 during a town meeting to move the settlement further from the banks of the Parker River. The green was established as a shared pasture and gathering place. The green has been considered the heart of the community of Newbury. When the town was incorporated in 1635, it's first located at the Lower Green, and they moved up to what was at one point called the Traying Green, which is a triangular plot, which is now the Upper Green. During the Revolutionary War, the Upper Green was a site of troop encampment under the command of General Benedict Arnold, and there is a monument, if you haven't seen it, a stone on the Upper Green commemorating this event. And I personally would like to thank Cole Abloh and his friends for spotlighting the Upper Green's need for attention and restoration. They really got the ball rolling to get us here today, so thank you for coming.
Very good. Okay. The next thing is where we are at the moment, and start discussion with you all, is that we've taken from the Abloh concept some of the important things which we've focused on and worked on at the moment, which is in the discussion points. And now I've sort of opened the whole floor up to any observations, assumes, comments, including the committee here on any of these. Yes, sir.
Has there been any discussion of eliminating that concrete pad in the Upper Green? Doesn't seem to serve any useful purpose.
That's where the hand tub's set up. That's where the hand tub's set up when they have musters.
Yeah.
That's what that concrete pad is for. That's where the hand tub's set up. Been there a long while.
And it's needed for the hand trucks?
Yeah. Yeah, well, they're narrow wheels, steel wheels, they aren't rubber wheels. They would sink right in the dirt.
Okay. Well, by the way, all these points are going to be noted down and recorded. So, yes. So,
In addition to what's on your cover page here,
yes.
is there gonna be more than one phase? Is this phase one? Is there other plans 2 and 3 years from now, expand the scope of this?
So at this point, we essentially have just started putting together a list of ideas. So we haven't necessarily prioritized them. I mean, we're hoping that feedback from the community is going to help us start to prioritize what we're hearing from people being more and less important. And probably the next stage, we'll start to figure out phasing and pricing. But I'd say at this point, we don't have a necessary priority or stage.
This is a work in progress now,
Yes.
looking for input, scheduling pushed off a little in the future, budgeting the same thing to get closer to your objectives.
Yes.
Yes. Behind you. So,
I have 2 questions. Is it okay to make a suggestion that's
absolutely.
not?
This is not an exhaustive list at all. Yeah, that's why we're here.
I live down the street from the Green, and you know, of course, we all see the skaters, etc. And I grew up near in Maryland, the canal that, believe it or not, actually freezes, and people ice skate there when it gets cold enough. From Washington, and you had fires all over the canal, and it's a great to have a fire by a place where you can skate, even in Maryland. And I just think it'd be really game changing for the people who are there skating and the families to actually have some type of low fire pit, you know, stone thing, etc. You know, I realized that it would involve periodically bringing some wood over, etc. But that's a suggestion. I just think it'd be a very, very nice thing to have. By the same token, to actually have a picnic table, so people could eat something there, and a lot of people who can't have campfires in their yard, etc. So that's a suggestion. that, you know, in terms of how it relates to the historical quality of the green, you know, if you think of it as a community gathering place, and now the community gathering is the ice skating. And it's, so that's one, thing. The second, question is Cole here?
He's not.
Okay. Well, I guess, so I guess my question has to do with the, if there has been, total separation from any money that could be sourced from Keith Outlaw in any way, shape, or form.
Yes.
So the donation he's referencing isn't a donation from?
No,
Okay.
it was from one of the sisters that lived on the green.
One of the Lent
Okay.
sisters.
Oh, okay, good.
So no, the town was afraid, you know, just did not accept the gift,
Okay.
so they're not part of it.
I understand the sins of the father are not upon the child, but
Absolutely
still,
not.
it's
And-
important to be separate.
Chris Franks did a great job in bringing this to everyone's attention, and he's a, I've spoken to him several times, and he's a very, very nice young man, so he had a very good idea, it just didn't seem to work out, so.
Yeah, so it's nice to recognize that, but yet separate from the money. Thank you.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I don't think anybody in this room knows who I am. I'm Dick Cunningham's oldest daughter, Wilma. I live at 159 Scotland Road. I believe when my mother passed away, my father planted trees on the evergreen in her memory. Is everything coming down? Because I can check into this and find out just exactly when and what, if necessary, but that's mainly why I'm here today, is to, because they are in memory of my mother. My father traced back to the sons and daughters, my mother did not, but that's really got nothing to do with anything.
Cunningham name is well known in the town of Newbury.
Oh, and good, yeah.
Do we have a sort of record of which trees or were laid in?
I'll try and, I'll check with my brother and my
Very
sister to see if, they have any, you know, recollection. I just remember that he did it.
Well, Tim is the tree warden, and he might like to speak about what trees might have to come down, not,
Well, I don't even know at this point.
Yeah, so-
What trees were planted, so I'm not looking to,
No.
because, well, I don't know. If I knew, then I'd say,
Right.
okay, could
Right.
you tell me if those trees are going to be cut down?
But-
I don't.
Part of it is, for many years, there wasn't a very big budget in the tree warden for, call it, maintenance, removal of trees. So it was probably, maybe 18 months ago, I talked to Tracy, Town Hall, and said, we really need to look at every one of those trees on the common and see which ones are fine, which ones have minor issues, which ones have major issues. Right now, we did get, and it came pretty much into service, the first part of the year, a tree truck that the town now owns, which makes it a lot easier to do the work, because before that, without the tree truck, all of this would have had to go out to bid. Now we can have a public hearing on the trees, look at them, particularly once you get up in the bucket truck and start pruning out the dead wood and stuff that, you know, needs to be done. And like I said, we hadn't had the money to do that in the past. Now we can do that. Once we know, you know, what shape the trees are in, that's when the determination comes, okay, we prune this one back, it should be fine. This one, yeah, not so good, this is one that probably should come down, but that would all be part of, even with what we're going with the committee here, once there's a determination, okay, this is what we wanna do, then you would have to have the public hearing on, looking at the trees and see which ones need to come down. It's the sad part in that, because the trees aren't necessarily being maintained, and particularly trees around other streets, that year of 2015, 2016, when we had the drought, it really did a job on a lot of trees. And the root system, because the drought went so deep, the root system started to dry out, a lot of trees were damaged. But along the green, there's a lot of them that I think are just gonna need some pruning. Others, once we get up in there with the bucket truck and, you know, it looks fine from, you know, on the ground level, then you get up in the tree, you see it's all hollow down through the center. That's not a good thing, you know, when you have people around the green.
Okay, so you're not just clearing, you are doing tree by tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, cause at this point, you know, since Tim hasn't had a chance, I think this winter, to do some of the pruning to get a better assessment of the trees, at this point, all that we had as a rough outline for feedback is that for the areas on the green where there are stumps right now, where there were trees, basically digging out those stumps and planting new trees. And then, as Tim mentioned, as they do the pruning, if there are trees that look like they are completely dead and are a hazard, to have separate hearings on whether those come down. And the trees that we've put up there are just some suggestions to get feedback on. Obviously, not all of those would go up, but just feedback from people on which ones will go to replace the stumps that are there now. And then if there are, which we don't know at this point, if there are any dead trees that need to come down for a safety reason, then those would also get replanted with some sort of, and
So it's not really age, it's not an age factor, it's tree by tree.
Yeah.
Depending on what this drought did.
Condition.
Because these trees would, that my father planted, or had planted, I'm not saying, I don't know, 15 years, maybe.
yeah, it's not based on age.
Okay, that's another thing I want.
And we also, with input from Tim and then some other folks on the committee that have more knowledge of trees than I, because I have very limited knowledge of trees, but we did select native varieties, because that was something that in the forums around the Green ER plan, that the community seemed to be saying that, you know, native to this area was important. So we selected a group of trees that Tim weighed in on are, you know, healthier for this area and don't succumb to some of the sicknesses that certain trees do, but also aren't native. So try to pay homage to the green and its history.
Trees are on page 2 of your,
I saw that, I just, oh, the list.
List.
Yeah, it was,
That's.
The Green ER plan did call for taking every tree out and replacing them. Probably 30 trees, they were gonna take every tree down. But this plan that we've come up with is just gonna suggest that prune the ones that need work, because there's some beautiful trees in there, they're just grown kind of weird, some of them are just,
They haven't been maintained.
they haven't been properly pruned over the
I
years.
mean, that's, the upper row green up, isn't it?
right,
You know,
True.
and to let it go,
That's right.
might pay half.
that's why we're here.
I mean, Newbury doesn't have the cheapest taxes, real estate taxes in town.
Really?
Money's going in places that maybe it shouldn't go as much, because they need to save the historical value of the town of Newbury.
Get that going here.
Okay.
Quietly.
Yes,
Hi guys, I'm Matt McManus, I'm the current president of the Byfield Newbury Little League, and we had a lot of discussion with the Green ER group prior to this, so I just wanted to show up today and just kind of provide our board's support to this project. We love the fact that this is getting attention, and I just want to make sure everyone's aware that we would love to be part of this, and if you guys have questions around it, why we were going to leave the field where it was, what would need to happen for the safety of the boys and girls of the town, or if the proposed removal of the field a little bit to the left, adjacent to where the muster is, we had some ideas and thoughts on that as well too. So super excited that this is moving forward, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that we wanted to be as supportive and as helpful as we could be. So,
very good. Very excellent. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for coming along.
Thank you.
And we call upon you to come along to one of our meetings following this one to follow up. Yes.
I just wanted to comment and thank you guys for picking out native trees. I go to the green every day, and I'm kind of a backyard bird watcher too, and there are been some unusual, birds in the pond lately. There's been a hooded merganser that I had to ask this man laying on the ground, taking a picture of it. There's been a green heron in there. There's been, I think it's called a black not a black nighthawk. I forget, that nighthawk, yeah. There's been, there's been a, egret, there's a great blue heron. I mean, I think with more native trees around there, we might get some more interesting wildlife around there
That's
too.
because the geese have gone as well.
Yeah.
That and the,
Don't say
well,
that.
now there's frogs and fish in it
Yes,
for a while.
yeah, I see those too, so
Thank you, fellas.
I'm happy to get everything going, and it's a nice place to visit every day.
John?
Question on the baseball diamond there. I see that you're leaning on the list, just kind of cleaning it up a little bit, but, so the intent right now is to keep that, not to remove it. And I would encourage you to, if you're going to keep it, is maybe clean up the backstop a little bit.
Yeah.
And I would also encourage you not to move it. It shouldn't be out in the middle of the green. This is a green, it's not a baseball field.
Point taken.
I guess one other thing to note that's somewhat related to the baseball field, there's been a lot of comments around the drainage in the baseball field outfield, and I know that that's something that can hinder use of the green at times. And the Green ER plan had suggested actually a regrading of the green, and what we've suggested here for now, partly given disruption, partly given cost associated with that, and just the funds that we're realistically working with at this point. Tim had made the suggestion of applying gypsum. I don't know if it's worth, because gypsum wasn't something that I was familiar with. I don't know if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about what that application would hopefully do, and.
Well, I think over time, whenever you've got soil, depending on what the consistency of the soil is, the soil can pack down. And once the soil packs down, then water's not gonna go down through there. And if that happens to be just the low point in the field, then that's where all the water's gonna go. What gypsum does is it actually breaks up the particles in the soil so that over time, the applications of the gypsum allow the water to drain down through, and it may not be necessary to regrade everything. It would help around the trees, anywhere around the fields to do that. In the scope of things, it's relatively inexpensive to put it down, and it would take probably a few years putting that down, but I think it would make a huge difference in the ability for the soil to drain. Same way with applying, the lime. I mean, anybody here know the last time lime was put down on there? And if you think about your own lawn, you try and put lime down, each year. And you may find that just by getting the gypsum there to help increase the drainage, get the lime down, to get the pH up where it belongs so that the grass can actually grow, then that may inexpensively solve a lot of the problems that can be there. It could cut down on, the big question was drainage going into the pond. Well, if the soil's all compacted, the water's just gonna roll on the top of the soil and eventually wind up there. If it rains and the soil is more open, then the water's gonna go down, less likely to drain into the pond. So, I think that's, like I said, that's an inexpensive fix, call it, for seeing what it will do. The lime should be done on both the greens, maybe every 2 years, but, it's gonna be an application process. Believe it or not, even though people talk about how the oaks and the maples and stuff are acid-loving trees, with those trees, if the pH gets so low, then they don't grow well. It's one of the big issues they have with the maples up in Vermont. The sugar maples up there are dying off because the soil is too acidic. So you have to actually bring the pH up to get the trees to, grow and be happy. Not as much as what your lawn would be, but still, all of those things, like I said, are fairly inexpensive to do.
And so with with, you know, hearing that from Tim, what we, you know, have proposed as a straw man for input is to try out the gypsum, given that it is relatively inexpensive, and my understanding it's organic as well, to give that a shot and see if that helps the drainage. And then if not, then you could go back to the drawing board and see if there's something else that could be done. But anyway, I wanted to explain that because that was something that wasn't as familiar to me.
Craig Loth from Byfield. I believe the base of the flagpole on one side is rotted. And as a suggestion, rather than replacing the entire flagpole, I wonder if it's possible just to replace, put a new base in and then hinge the flagpole to the new base. There's a lot of flagpoles that are configured like that, so you can maintain the upper portion of the flagpole. You can lower it down and paint it. I don't know what the upper portion looks like. Maybe with a new bucket truck, you could inspect the top of the pole. But as a suggestion, that may work.
No, yeah, now, we observed that, when you say the base, do you mean the lowest part of the pole?
I think,
The
yes,
lowest?
I think that
Yeah.
far off the grade, there's some rot on the, on one side.
We observed that, and, we both feel that, Robin and I feel that that pole could probably be shortened by a couple of feet and maybe eliminate that, and you wouldn't really notice it in the height of the pole.
Right.
But it's a good point.
Yep, good one, we'll check it out. Okay. Yes.
Pam Wolf. I have a couple questions. One is about Little League. Is there a need, when I drive by, I always get worried about the kids running into the street. Is that part of the design considerations?
So
Hedge or fence?
when we were approached initially, the discussion was around safety for the kids. The field is the only field that we have in town for our younger ages to be playing on, that older kids play here at Pearson. There is always traffic in that area, as you know, and balls traveling into live traffic either on the first base or the third base side. So we had discussions around putting fencing around there, we had discussions around kind of protecting that area a little bit more, and then somebody suggested, what if we actually shifted the field adjacent to where the muster is, creating that area where the baseball field is now, turning that into green space, planting other trees and such, and just shifting it over towards that side so that the left field line would be more towards going where the Christmas tree is, where the Christmas tree lighting is all the time, so.
That resolves the issue.
It does resolve the issue, and then the grading and such, you know, would also make sense because we have a difficult time getting on that field because of the water and what have you too. So I don't care where the field lands, I just wanted to make sure that it's preserved for the kids, you know, when my son is just about to age out, so. It's a very challenging thing, and we raise the money for it, we take care of the field ourselves, so we're willing to help fundraise for this project as well too, so. But safety is the #1 concern, because those benches are not protected and they're too close to the road.
Yeah, I know, I love the field there, but I'm very thinking about that.
Okay.
And I have one other question, after someone else has had their turn.
Anyone else? Yes.
Phyllis Oran, Newberry. I love down here, get rid of the geese. Does anyone have any sort of plan? Because the geese, if we make the grass more wonderful and all the trees more wonderful and the whole place fabulous, the geese are just going to be coming in and making a mess of the fields and the lawn and.
There are some technological advances on that which are used by country clubs and golf courses using particular sound waves that can't be heard by the human ear, that are actually within the Canada Goose's reference frame that cause them not to be there. And if you put them by the pond's the driver that brings them in, because that's where they land and they just move out from there. If you put that by that, it just covers that area and it shouldn't offend anyone else, even with sensitive hearing. It's a particular thing. So.
If I might, because this is a sore spot with me, the geese is the sore spot with me. And I've noticed over the last several weeks, there have been no geese there. Does anybody know why?
I've seen a lot of postings about a coyote in the neighborhood, but I don't think their timings coincide with it.
Fred.
Coyotes, and golf courses also use fake coyotes, which we did a couple
Yeah,
years
well,
ago.
They get used
And
to
they
it.
were.
The trick with placing coyotes is you have to, those fake coyotes, you have to move them every day.
I'll move them.
They don't do them.
Well, Fred, the geese are still there because every night they go over my house. So they're
Yeah, I
still,
know, but they aren't.
no, not all the time, but they're still there at night though.
Still there.
Yeah, they're still around.
They come in at night.
Yeah.
That's unusual, because you
Weird.
usually go out to see it.
But just every night, my dog just sits there and watches them go over the house.
I hadn't heard about the sound wave, way of doing it, that could also disrupt the hearing of any of the water birds that you run around there.
Correct, and that's why we're investigating it. They, manufacturers say they have different products for different types of birds, and they specifically have one for the Canada goose because it is so invasive in the whole area. So they say, but you're absolutely right, we will research
It'd be
it.
nice to see that.
Yeah, because we don't want to drive away all the wonderful things that have been mentioned as well. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just curious, I agree with cleaning up the walkway by the pond, just wondered if you folks had any ideas about how we were gonna clean it up, is it just gonna be weeded and maybe more stone dust, or?
That's
Or
what
do you
we
know
had,
that?
that's what we had in mind,
Yeah.
because as you know, the walkway that we're talking about is the walkway, which you know, by the pond that's, right next to High Road. And right now it's stone dust, but it's weeded, it just doesn't look very clean, so yeah, the straw man suggestion was just to weed it and clean it up, but not change it.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Getting back to what Tim Lamper said, because I said I live on Scotland Road. Within 6 months of my brand new house in 1975, my sewage was on top of the ground. At that time, my father, who was raised, wasn't born there, he was born at the hospital in Newbury, raised in the town of Newbury, said, Newbury is clay and ledge.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know that what Tim is suggesting would work in the long run.
Well, the gypsum will actually break up the clay particles. Gypsum can do a couple of things.
Oh, okay.
When I have the garden center, I would recommend it to people in the spring. Okay, you've got these areas where you've thrown ice melter down, or you've got that strip of land that's out in front of the house where I'm gonna call it road salt, even though it's not salt anymore. That salt gets in there, it attaches itself to the roots of the grass, and that's what kills the grass. With the gypsum, if you put it down, the water hits it, it releases those salt particles that are attaching to the grass and just lets it wash down through. Same way with the clay. Clay, if you ever look at it under a microscope, it's these little tiny BB type of things that are joined together. So what the gypsum does is it breaks those particles apart. So over time, it opens that clay up. So now you've got, with that clay that's there, you got the grass clippings, whatever starts to break down, whatever residual from leaves starts to break down. Over a period of time, it starts building up that organic matter. I would suspect that some of those areas where you have the poorest of the drainage has probably got some clay underlying it somewhere. And the gypsum would help with that as well, to break up those clay particles. Anywhere along the sides where the trees are, where there could be salt that could be damaging the trees, the gypsum put down there would help to, break up the compacted soil, but also help to offset any of the, call it salt, for a better term, that's in the soil.
Are we sure there's no ledge?
The only way you're gonna find out is give somebody a shovel and say, start digging and find out. It wouldn't surprise me, but even with ledge, that green has been there for how many years? So even if there's ledge underneath it, the cattle still grazed on it. I'm sure there was nobody applying gypsum or lime or anything to it back in the 1700s. So whatever's there has been there for a long time, which to me is an indication that, okay, it can grow, the grass and whatever else we want, we can call it fix the drainage, by some simple methods. I mean, ultimately, nobody, I think, wants to dig it up, because I think that was part of the whole thing with Green ER, if I'm not mistaken, that they wanted to level the whole thing, you know, fix the grade of it, which would have really done a job on the roots of the trees. The tree roots grow at certain levels in the soil to do certain things, anchor the tree, take up nutrients, whatever. Once you start messing with that pitch of the soil that's on top of them, then the trees start going downhill pretty quick. So if we can just get some basic things done there to see what it will do, it's not a major expense to do it, you know, and you would start to notice the first year with compacted soil, that the gypsum would help to take care of that. I worked at a garden center many years ago, and they had a clay driveway, and we got a delivery in, there was some bags of gypsum on there, pulled one of them off, pulled the other one, and it caught a little piece of metal that was on the edge of that tailgate. Ripped the bag open, and the kid threw it over his shoulder to take it. The gypsum went everywhere. Happened to rain that night. The next morning, it looked like somebody took a little tiny shotgun and blew holes in the soil, because it broke those bonds. So, like I said, I think that's the easy fix, or an experiment, call it, to see what it is. It's not gonna do anything.
So long as they realize it's an experiment, because of the ledge, my house had to be moved. I'm sitting on top of the ground. I have a split entry, and literally, it's backfilled in the front, but in the back, it's literally, you know, on top of the ground because of ledge.
Oh, where I live,
You know.
there's a huge amount of rock there. There's, I think they call it a moraine, if I'm not mistaken. It would run from Central Street, at the intersection of School, and then it goes down behind, and then it comes out opposite where Triton is. You can see it's like a little hill. There's more boulders there. We've got one in the backyard that I don't think you can dynamite it out of there. One or two, you know, it's just, you know, it's just how it is.
I'm just
so.
thinking drainage.
Well, I mean, even if
You know, even if there's 2 feet of clay that can be,
yeah,
with, you know, with the gypsum.
basically, if there was 6
Doesn't
inches
mean that,
of
you know,
drainable soil
and
there,
you're lucky if it's 2 feet.
yeah, whatever water that's there would go down, and then if it traveled along the ledge to wherever it was gonna naturally drain out, it at least would make it so that, yeah, maybe not the day after a heavy rainstorm, you know, most people around here would figure that after a day of heavy rain, you're not gonna go out into your lawn and walk around it until the water drains down through, and the same way in the green,
As
for the
long
most part.
as people realize it is experimental because of the town of Newbury and what
Yeah.
it's built on.
But like I said, it's the type of thing that for the green, a few $100s put into gypsum to see what it does.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
it isn't a good idea, I think it's a very inexpensive
Yeah.
experiment.
Yeah.
And I hope it works.
Well, hopefully it's not an experiment, but anyway, you know, a lot of these things where,
Should work.
over time, you know, we'll check out and test the results, and if it's not effective, then we'll move on to do something else.
Because there are a lot of different geological areas in the town of Newbury. We go from Old Town Hill down to the marshlands, so, in the area of Scotland Road and all around there, if I'm not mistaken, is where there were mines and everything because of the particular.
Yeah, further down the street from
Yeah,
Warren,
so that whole side of Scotland is, yeah, as we can see by certain other things going on there that have displayed others' problems. But then again, across the street, you've got, farmland.
You were intimating about the land that my family sold for the golf clinic, were you?
Only that you can then see different layers. So, across the street, we've got mostly all farmland, so there's a lot of different areas within the town of Newbury.
Across the street is wetland.
Yeah, so, totally different, you know, geological patterns, and, hopefully the green is what it is, which is just mostly farm type land, with just soil and clays.
Okay, yes.
What is the plan for the pond, to clean up the pond?
it's on the list for checking out the aerator that's apparently in it, but we're not so sure about that. And clean it up as necessary. I don't know whether anything else.
Yeah,
came
I'd say
about.
at this point, we don't really have that much planned for the pond other than the aerator, but if there are suggestions, would love to hear what you might have in mind.
Sure. We have included the concern about the outlet and how restrictive it is. And we've discussed about the aerator a little bit, but the fellow who was working on the pond says that he doesn't think the aerator would make any difference in the pond, and it is a lot better with whatever he's done there. So
What has he been doing?
he has been, don't ask me, but he has been cordoning off areas and scooping out algae and
Phosphate, he's taking a lot of phosphate out.
I don't, pardon me?
I talked to him a couple of times.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, those big baffles, I think, kind of, he places them depending on how the wind is gonna blow, I think he told me, and it kind of collects all that green goo, and then it ends up in the big square thing somehow, and dumps it, and
Well, last couple of weeks ago, we had a heat wave, and, you know, and the algae came back, but because he's done so much on top of it, he got it taken care of almost in one day. So he's done a lot of good work for the town.
I think part of the problem is what's making the algae, and I have a feeling that goose dew has a lot to do
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
So I think go back to the geese again.
I had another question. I think one of the meetings last winter, Mr. Thurl, you were talking about like the drainage in the pond, and it used to somehow go out
Well,
behind the old cemetery.
it
'Cause
drains over
when
here, so.
I was little, I mean, did this cover all of this algae and stuff in the
And
pond?
there weren't any geese.
No, there were
Right.
ducks. There used to be a farmer that would put all of his
Right.
ducks in there
He
every
wants to put
summer.
6 ducks in there, right?
Yeah, and then the fire department would help collect them every fall, so you
Yeah.
could take, and the pond was clean.
But we had no geese then. I think the
So you
geese,
think it was all, the geese was.
you know, geese live to be 99 years old, and they have 5 or 6 living offspring every year.
Right.
So back then, there were only a few geese. Today, it isn't just our pond, it isn't just Newbury, I mean, it's everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, but yes, we'll be developing the project on the pond as well.
You could have a big community game of duck, duck, goose going around.
Well, unfortunately, the geese chase the ducks away, that's why, I mean, they are the top animals. Okay, any more questions, any more observations about tree varieties? Do we think it's a good idea? Anyone want to add any more species? Suggest any more?
Or speak out against any of
Well,
the
those,
ones
yeah,
that are in
it's,
the
as we said, they are, but we're not taking, no plan to take down viable trees at all. Let's just replace them as necessary.
And it will be nice, the ones that have already come down, to get some trees to replace those stumps.
Yeah.
Well, the whole committee, I guess. One of the problems, of course, along High Road is that you've got power lines. And so all of our trees along there are heavily sculpted. Would you be, if you're replacing trees there, would you replace them under the power lines again? Or would you move them in a little bit? Off a little bit?
You can refer to Tim on that, because he may.
To me, that's a fool's mission to do that. I look at other communities around where they've taken trees down because the trees have, you know, grown up under the power lines, and they go back and replant trees under the power lines. And it's like, you know, let's learn
Great
something
work
from
doing it right now.
what's going on, you know. If you take the height of the tree and the width of the tree and say, okay, we're gonna plant tree number X, and it grows 40 feet tall and 20 feet wide. So if that's the case, then you would move the tree 40 feet in from where the power line is. Then that way, if it's growing up 20 feet, you're gonna get, 20 feet going this way,
Yeah.
then it's not gonna be under the power line. So there's no need to do anything other than just normal maintenance type of pruning on it to shape the tree early on and to do it. But to plant them directly under the power lines, and why bother planting a tree? In 25 years, they're gonna have to come through and prune it to keep it away from the power lines, and it does not make any sense to do that.
One of my early recommendations was to talk to National Grid and see if we can get them to go underground. I think you made the comment, not a chance, that's good.
Yeah. But Tim is not telling you everything he's told us, because he suggested because of the salt damage, we wanna set the trees further back from the road, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot
But
more sense.
also because of the power lines, you suggested the same thing. So we just set them further back, and there'll be less.
So for a few years, we might have trees doing this along High Road.
Because of the
Because the
existing
ones that
ones.
are there are
Right.
still viable, that are under the power lines, and then, although if they're not one of the gifts, the heavily sculpted ones, maybe it makes sense to take them out.
Same along Green Street, too, we're gonna get the same effect.
And they're just, there
Well,
are the
Green
power
Street, the
lines
power
there.
line's on the other side, I believe.
And two things I've heard today, trimming trees and putting gypsum down, those could be done almost immediately.
Exactly.
Is that the plan this fall and winter and spring to do some of this work?
That's up to the selectmen.
But,
Yes.
okay, that
We-
being said, we know there's money for it. It's obvious, it would seem to me in the short term, that you write them a letter and say, hey, we'd like to do these two things and spend $10,000.
Absolutely.
Start the experiment now.
As far as the trimming goes, that's in the budget for the tree warden. So that's just a case of saying, okay, we're gonna have a public hearing. Every tree on the upper green is going to be pruned, and then we make a determination of which ones should be replaced. But that's the type of thing that can be done, late fall, during the winter. The trees that are along the side of the green that are along Green Street. You can set a bucket truck up
Do you
there.
need a hearing to do that?
That's state law.
And you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
no matter where it is in town, if a tree has to be pruned or taken down, there has to be a public hearing. It's advertised in the Daily News, there's a poster put on the tree that says, this is one of the trees. Then, after the hearing is done, if there's no objections, then the trees, before it used to be the trees were put out to bid, you had to get bids. It was done under prevailing wage, so you could have a tree that could cost $4,000 to take down under prevailing wage. Now that the town can do it with their own bucket truck, if you figure out the cost of it, it's probably, let's say, $800 to $1,000 to do it. There are gonna be some trees that the town can't take down, and we would still have to, put that out to bid. For instance, there's 3 along the back of Veterans Park that are closer to, Mud Street that have to come down. The problem is, with a crane sitting in the park, it could sink down into the soil, so that's probably gonna have to wait until winter time. Hopefully we can get it done, but town doesn't have a crane, the bucket truck's not gonna reach it, so that would have to go out to, bid, get 3 bids, is what the law says, and then have them taken down. Talking with some of the companies, they have equipment that can get in there once the ground is frozen, but, that's an example of, where money would have to come from, but that's in the budget. So the trimming of, my thought was, let's look at the lower green for the sake of trimming at the same time the upper green, have the public hearing, say this is what we're gonna do, we're just gonna prune them up, see, and then, once they've been pruned up, the determination can be there that, yes, this one has to come down. And there may have to be another public hearing on the removal of it, but, that can be done out of the tree warden budget for trimming those trees up. That's not a problem, coming up with the money to do that part.
Yes.
Any thoughts about areas of shrubbery or pruning? Shrubbery, putting in native shrubs or having a perennial garden.
Shrubbery was on the list, wasn't it?
We had talked about
We had to.
clearing up around the memorials. We have several, we have quite a few stones there for our veterans. And that, the corner by the gas station area, try to trim that up a bit and clean it up a bit. See if we can, get volunteers around. Like they used to have years ago, used to have a beautification committee for the Upper Green years ago. And, to, maybe take care of some plantings and things like that, some perennials, maybe some annuals. There's always something in the little trough with the sign for the lower green.
I was thinking more on the pond area, just lots of them.
Well, we wanna probably be careful about putting anything closer to the water than where we're trying to clean the water, and we're gonna have more, disturb the soil more, might go in. That I'm not, an expert on, so. But we would like to, showcase the memorials more than have them hidden by things that have like really overgrown. They just, a lot of things just really need to be trimmed that are there, and then we wanna clean up that area a little so it's easy to see, to come around the corner there, for, traffic safety also.
I guess I was thinking if one of the former plans, they could put a buffer area, vegetation around the pond, thinking that might deter the geese from being attracted to the water area. I don't know if that had any validity or not, but that was sort of what I was thinking.
I'm not sure. They're gonna fly in and they'll just fly over and drop in.
Okay, but we'll be reviewing all the shrubs, current and potential for future as well.
I also want to say I'm thrilled with the idea of doing about the trees, the natives, and the number of them in the variety and all that kind of thing.
How are we doing? Any more? Nothing else? No, as I said, if there's anything that comes to light from yourselves or friends, neighbours who are associated with the Upper Green, we've got the contact details on the sheet here, so we can continue this. And then in the new year, and as said before that earlier on, that some of these we might, like necessary tree trimming, get started on anyway, because we can. So, and then we'll hopefully have another list, a bit more extensive, a bit more detailed list for the next discussion forum in the new year, for which we will be sending out a time on that. So anyway, thank you very much. Oh, one at the back.
Just, when do you guys meet?
When?
Do you have a regular meeting time and where?
Yes, we've had about 3 or 4. The next one's next Tuesday.
At what time?
7, Town Hall, 2nd floor conference room.
7 p.m.?
Yes,
Yep.
ma'am.
In the conference room?
This
Yep.
is the small conference room, yeah.
And could you just tell me how much the donation was for, and if people wanted to donate, is there a place for them to donate?
Anybody that wants to donate anything can send a check to the town, and in the memo, put what you wish the money to be for, as evidenced by people who have been donating to the World War II Memorial.
Yep, same thing.
And it will be placed in the Upper Green Fund, so that it's specifically targeted to.
And how much is in that fund right now?
At least, I believe it's at least 50,000.
50,000?
Yeah.
And that was the donation that you got?
From the Lunds. And then there has been smaller donations over the years that have been made by other folks. And I did check, and the money is still in the account, so.
How long ago was the Lunt donation?
It was right after the last sister passed away, I believe.
I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago. I think. Yeah, about 8. Jen, about 8 years. Yeah, about 8 years. About 8 years ago.
I can probably give you an exact date, but not at the moment.
That's okay, thank you.
Say, back in the school, my question, are there opportunities for volunteers? For instance, I noticed, fixing and painting the flagpole or painting the backstop for that yard. Those are pretty, I guess mundane activities, and folks shouldn't hurt themselves. Is there, do we go to the same website for those types of things? Or?
Yeah, I think we'll follow up with the selectmen on the process for that, but certainly it's a very good idea and definitely should be, we should pay attention to, yeah.
People have a tendency to better take care of things they help to either create or maintain themselves, so they keep an eye better. Like, you always make sure your own yard looks nice, and if you're gonna try to help take care of the green, big yard, but still, it's the same thing, you don't want to
I was
put
thinking
messages.
an organized effort, you take one afternoon,
Yeah.
maybe have
Yeah.
5 or 10 people.
Great way to do it.
Maybe that's
Really good idea.
That's how they did a lot of the town hall.
Yeah, that's, exactly.
Yeah, we'll definitely put it on the list.
It's a great idea, thanks for reminding us of that. So if you'll notice, the, one of the Board of Selectmen website, you can send things there, which you can reach through the town website also. And then you'll notice that the Historical Commission is one of them, it's because we don't, the Upper Green Activities Committee doesn't have a website, but because I'm on the Historical Commission, we have a website that you can reach also through the town website. You can find the Historical Commission and send any comments or questions or whatever there, and then I share them all with the committee, so it's not like it's just being funneled into one's little zones, just so you'll know. We want people involved, we want people to care about the green, we really wanna get this thing up and done. Our charge is only for 6 months, so it's not like one of these long extended things that's gonna be around for like the next 20 years and nothing gets done. Hopefully, it'll all get done, as much as we can get done very quickly, and then we'll rely on maintenance and people to let us know. We'll let the town Board of Selectmen know if there's things that have started to slip. So it's all about the community.
Pretty much wrapped up. I'm in here.
Yeah.
One comment that's probably out of order. And anybody that's interested in the history of Newbury, and is interested in the Upper Green, please be interested in the Lower Green. The northeast cornerstone of the green has been sold to a developer, and his plans are to take the old Plummer Humphrey homestead, pick up the barn, move it, and somehow make 2 lots on that corner, and turn the barn into a $1.5 million home. Same thing that's happened to the Bushy barn, and the same thing that happened to the barn just to the north on 1A there, on High Road. I don't know what we can do to stop it, but I know there's a hearing on the 7th, Jan? Is it November 7th? Yeah, anyway, but that's mostly on the property. Property is gonna be turned into 5 building lots down there. And you know what that looks like just by going up Newman Road. So just a comment, if you're interested in the greens, keep an eye on that.
Definitely are.
Because it's happening rapidly.
Thank you very much.
Selectmen can better answer this, but I believe that the development piece, the town has a right of first refusal on that land. I don't know, I think the barn, maybe not so much, I don't wanna speak out of turn, but that's my understanding of my report.
You're right.
The part that was going to be the 5 lots, the town does have an option to buy that. Do I have that right?
Yeah, to my knowledge, yes, that's correct.
And it's also really not a discussion to be had by the applicant.
Right. We'll wait till we adjourn.
Well, thank you all for
But-
sitting on this committee.
Thank you all for
But,
coming.
but one last thing, as a selectman, and Damon's a selectman here too, I'm so proud of this group and also the people. You guys have shown up, this is what Newbury Town government is about. So, thank you all for coming.